Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk a little bit about uh, Haiti. Now, earlier today, Lisa, who was my esteemed and lovely co host, who I love very much, came on this channel and she wanted me to talk about Haiti and about the current situation in the Greater Antilles Island. Now, I have no problem talking about Haiti. I consider Haiti to be the most important island in the Western Hemisphere as it relates to the African diaspora. And when talking about African diasporic history, it is the most important. Ireland is the first black republic in the Western Hemisphere, and to a great many deal of people of African descent, it represented freedom in places where, in the Western Hemisphere and around the world, really, where black people were still enslaved, such as the United States and Brazil. Haiti achieved its independence in 1804 and by itself with no European intervention. As a matter of fact, the European powers in America that was independent at that time did not want to help Haiti because for fear that it may arise rebellion among its own slaves. There were slaves in Iberian America, which was Spanish America, and Portuguese America. There were slaves in the United States. There were slaves in the British owned Caribbean islands. There were slaves in the Dutch owned Caribbean islands, the Norwegian owned Caribbean islands, which eventually became the U.S. Virgin Islands. So they didn't want to upset the apple cart by helping the Haitians, even though the Haitians claimed to believe in and claimed to embody the exact same ideals, the exact same democratic ideals that we talked about earlier in the Caesar video, and that the French had copied. The Haitian revolutionaries, especially Toussaint Louverture and Henry Christopher, um, uh, believed that they embodied the idea of egalitarianism, of brotherhood, of fairness, of electoral democracy, but they didn't. The French revolutionaries didn't. Maximilien Robespierre and others, and Napoleon, they didn't see that. They didn't see that type of universal brotherhood extending to black people, to former slaves. So they fought against them and lost because the slave population had home field advantage and they didn't. And twice in Haitian history, 1806 and then again in 1817, uh, the Haitians chased the French out. But unfortunately, Haiti, which during the time that it was under French domination, it first got under French domination in the 17th century with the Treaty of Ryswick, a treaty signed in the Netherlands between France and Spain, in which Spain agreed to give the western half of the island of Hispaniola to France. France had turned it into a sugar producing colony, and it was the richest nation in the Western Hemisphere. But by the time the slaves had taken it over, what the French government made them do was pay reparations. No, not reparations to the slaves for being enslaved for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? Reparations to the French government. So whatever profit they made off the sugar, of the booming sugar industry, had to be given to the French. And this essentially bankrupted Haitian society. And this would later lead to a lot of corruption and a lot of mismanagement within the Haitian government. Later on, the United States would become involved. They would invade Haiti in the 1930s because they believed that Haiti was having corrupt leadership. The United States, as soon as they became a world power, had this idea, and I'm sure you guys studied it in American history, the Monroe Doctrine, the belief that the United States had the right to govern over all Latin American territories. And if something was going down, they had the right to chase European powers away from those American territories that wanted to be sovereign nations, and Haiti was included among them. But later on, President uh, President Theodore Roosevelt expanded this idea, basically saying, "Listen, if a government arises among these countries that is hostile to the interests of the United States, we then, the United States, have the right to come into this country and overthrow them. That's exactly what happened with Haiti and the Dominican Republic in the 1930s. And for a number of years during that time, uh, Haiti was occupied by the United States. Now, what I forgot to mention after that, okay, after the initial bumps of independence, the fact that no other country in the Western Hemisphere recognized them, there was a split in Haiti because Haiti was composed, again, I said, of two nations, a Spanish speaking nation in the east and a Creole, majority black French Creole speaking nation in the west. So, in an effort to uh, unify the two islands. In the 1840s, Pierre Bouvert, who was the president at that time, decided to overtake what was called Spanish Haiti, formerly Santo Domingo, right, and impose the language and culture and racial identity on that side of the island, which was much more light skinned, much more right, exactly, Hispaniola. Lisa's got it on the nail. The island was Hispaniola. It was given that name by Christopher Columbus during the conquest when he sailed the ocean blue in 1492. He went around and he changed all the Taino names, the original Indian names, to Western names. The name Haiti is the original name for the island. So when the original indigenous Haitians took back over and the Afro Haitians took back over, they gave the name, they changed it from Saint Dominique, which was the French translation of Santo Domingo, to Haiti, which means land of many hills. The hills and the physical geography, was one of the key factors that enabled them to win the Haitian Revolution. That the geography was one of the things that prevented American slave revolts from ever really being successful. We didn't we didn't in any of the southern states we didn't have the geography that the Caribbean islands had, especially Haiti. So land of many hills is the Taino word for this island, and they restored that name. But Lisa's absolutely right. The Spaniards, when they landed on it, this was the first European settlement in the Americas, the first slave plantation in the Americas in 1501. The first Africans that were delivered to the Western Hemisphere were delivered to Haiti in 1601. I mean, in 1501, in the island of Hispaniola. So, in 1844, uh, Pierre Boer, he decides he wants to create hegemony in the island. He wants to impose French Creole culture throughout the whole island. And three prominent men, most of all is Juan Pablo Duarte. Of course, they're light skinned or Dominicans of European descent. They don't like this. So they organize an underground rebellion, underground rebel movement known as the Trinitarios. And eventually it takes them a while, but on February 27th, 1844, they declare the eastern half of the island independent, creating the Dominican Republic. Now, the identities of these two islands, now they identify racially, has been a bone of contention between the two, especially during the 1940s. I mean, the 1930s and 40s, because Haiti identifies as a black nation, the most proud black nation in the history of the Western Hemisphere. Like I said, the only independent and free black nation in the Western Hemisphere that wasn't given its freedom, like we talked about in the Bob Marley movie. Like Jamaica was given its freedom in 1962, or other British colonies in the Caribbean were given their freedoms. Haiti was never given its freedom. Haiti earned its freedom. Haiti also, in the character of its culture, is much more African. We talked about in the movie The Woman Queen. Um, that movie takes place in Benin and Togo, West Africa, and parts of southwestern Nigeria. That religion, that Voodoo religion, that Orisha tradition religion. That religion was carried over from Africa to the Caribbean and maintained with, within Haiti. So it's very strong African tradition, more so than the other islands. Not that the other islands aren't majority black as well, they are. But anyway, that's Haiti's cultural tradition. The music, very African. Compa, zouk. No, zouk is from the other Eastern French speaking islands. But anyway, they are still part of France colonially. Um, but fast forward to modern times. Okay, during the Cold War, the United States, of course, during the Cold War, just like they did in other parts of the world, um, basically needed allies. They didn't want Cuba turns over to communism in 1959, of course, influenced by the rhetoric of the uh, the communists, the Bolsheviks. So they don't want that to happen to Haiti because Haiti is right next to Cuba, right? And the two nations have had tremendous openness. There's a lot of people of Haitian descent that live in eastern Cuba, in the Santiago de Cuba, the Oriente region of Cuba, right? So the United States doesn't want that to happen to Haiti. So they eventually leave Haiti in the 1930s, but now the Cold War is full on. So then they appoint their own dictators, Papa Doc Duvalier and his son, Baby Doc Duvalier. And these guys are pure dictators on the level with um, Trujillo. On I'm getting there, Lisa. On the level with Trujillo. And Trujillo was one of the worst dictators in the history of the island because uh, he was a subscriber to Hitler's racist ideologies. He believed in whitening the island of Hispaniola. So he committed against Haitian migrants and Haitian people on the border of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, what was called the Parse Massacre. The Haitians, being their language is French and Creole influenced, they couldn't pronounce the word parsley correctly in Spanish. So if they couldn't pronounce this word, they were automatically killed and massacred, right? So he was a tremendous bastard in the 30s. But then this other guy, Papa Doc Duvalier, he comes in with a Pan Africanist ideology. He comes in with all kinds of positivity, but it was all an attempt to seize power for he and his son. Finally, in the 1990s, a priest, Jean Bertrand Aristide, gains local popularity. Is so popular with the people. He's like a populist priest. He wants to help people. He wants to better Haiti because Haiti is in this economic situation that it was in. During the 1970s, tourism in Haiti was booming, but tourism is no longer booming because of the rise of HIV and AIDS, which it became a hotspot for that type of tourism, right? So the economy is really suffering. So Jean Pichon Aristide is out to help the people. But what does the United States government do? They fear that Haiti may be on its own and they overthrow Jean Pichon Aristide. And ever since the overthrow of Jean Bertrand Aristide in the 90s, Haiti has been in a tough situation. Now, fast forward to 2021. Once again, American operatives, in combination with the Dominican government, assassinate, with the help of a man living in Florida, Haitian exile, living in Florida, the president of Haiti, Janelle Moise. And ever since that assassination, now gangs like the G9 have taken over. These warlords have taken over and forced Ariel Henry, who is the sitting prime minister right now, out of the government. They're basically running the government, scaring away all the tourists, holding the entire country hostage. And the world is doing nothing about it. The world is turning a blind eye to the suffering of the Haitian people. The world is looking the other way when it comes to the suffering of the Haitian people. And they can't really go anywhere because for decades now, there's been a migration issue, both of them coming into the United States, with the United States cracking down on migrants, with migrants being a talk on our southern border, and on the other side of things, with the historical prejudice that exists between they and the Dominican Republic. If they go there, they will also be discriminated against. Okay, Lisa, what is it you want to send me? Okay. Um, 10 American diplomats have been evacuated from Haiti. And many people are saying that Biden let the Haitian community down. And he did. He's doing nothing to help the Haitian people. He's letting them be at the mercy of these gangsters. Just imagine, guys, if if gangs in our society, Bloods, Crips, Folks, Peoples, uh, Norteños, Sureños, actually ran the society and actually had influence in the government, it would be complete chaos, right? They would serve their own self interest. That's exactly what's going on over here. That has been going on not just in Haiti, but uh, President the president of El Salvador recently addressed this and put a tremendous crackdown on both Sureños and Revolucionarios, the two primary factions. Okay, basically, this article is saying that Governor Ron DeSantis, no surprise there, is sending Haitians back. This is nothing new, guys. They were doing this in the 1980s as Haiti was escaping Papa Doc Francois Duvalier's treachery. They were turning millions of Haitians back. They were letting Cubans in as were Cuba and the United States were doing that population transfers, the Mariel boat lift in the 1980s. But during that same exact time, they were turning Haitian migrants away, blaming them for AIDS, blaming them for the influx of HIV and AIDS. And eventually their image then became synonymous with AIDS. So it's no different here. An asshole like DeSantis wants to, pardon me, despite losing the election and failing miserably at gaining the Republican nomination, he wants to appear tough on migrants because that's the litmus test for the Republican parties. Can they appear tough on migrants, particularly migrants of color? Well, this is his toughness. But for the breakdown, the economic breakdown of Haiti, I blame the United States and I blame the Western world because they never gave Haiti a chance. Every time Haiti tried to rise up, the United States or the Western countries, particularly France, pulled the rug out from under them. Because much like the other parts of the developing world, the French want the Francophone nations to depend completely on them. They're looking at the turmoil in Niger in a very similar way from last year. They're saying, okay, Niger falls apart. We have to come in and we have to recolonize Niger. Now they're not doing it. They're not doing it through military power and through force. They're doing it through economics, right? But with this, with what Lisa's saying, with DeSantis is saying, of course he's going to do that, Lisa. They are black immigrants. He doesn't want them in the country. He associates them with gang violence. He associates them with trouble. Well, they would help Haiti to their own advantage, right? They were helping Haiti to the point that Haiti didn't become poor enough to embrace communism. They just didn't want them to embrace communism because the the game that was played was the United States would put in these puppet governments that were anti-communist and pro-capitalist, like Papa Doc Duvalier and his son Baby Doc. No, they didn't. Lisa's talking about 2010 with the earthquakes, because by then the Cold War was over. So the United States would put these. They would do this all over the world. This was the main cause of the Vietnam War. The person that we were backing that was North Vietnamese was overthrown by the South Vietnamese. So we felt like we had to defend the North Vietnamese against the South Vietnamese. So anyway, all over the world we would put these puppet governments in power to support our agenda in the region. We didn't want Haiti to fall to communism. We didn't want any Caribbean or Central American nation to fall to communism. So we would pretend to help them. We would put in puppet governments that would inevitably oppress the people, right? So it wasn't necessarily to help them, just like when we overthrew Mossadegh in Iran in 1952. That wasn't to help the Iranians move away from socialism. That was to put into power the Shah of Iran, our own puppet government. It wasn't when we overthrew the we went to war in a proxy war with the Soviet Union in 1979, that wasn't to help the Afghans. That wasn't to help them exercise religious freedom in the Muslim religion. That was to install an anti communist government. So, seeing as though Haiti was strategically placed within next to Cuba and has this relationship with Cuba, and Cuba was already communist because we knew we had fucked up by not helping Castro overthrow Batista. We knew Batista was a dictator, much like Papa Doc Duvalier was. Right? We knew that, and we didn't help Batista. We didn't help Castro overthrow Batista. So if we didn't help him, he went to our rival. He went to the Soviet Union, and he eventually embraced communism. Now there are ideals that he and Che Guevara had communism on their minds anyway, and they were going to embrace it regardless. But he then became, Castro did, the prophet for other countries to embrace communism. And that's what we didn't want. So we were willing to help Haiti to the extent of not embracing communism, but not to the extent of really helping them. And that's basically what we did all throughout the world. We would have our allies that were anti-communist, staunch anti-communist, like Pakistan and South Asia, like Israel in the Middle East, like the Gulf countries in the Middle East, like Haiti in Central and South America, like the Contras in Nicaragua. We would have them, and we would stop at nothing throughout the Cold War to help these so-called allies defeat the communists. Because this was the Cold War, Lisa. It was fought not between the United States and the Soviet Union directly, except for the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1961. We almost came to blows then. But through different parties, them supporting one party, us supporting another, them supporting somebody that might be favorable to communism, such as the Chinese in 1949, or us supporting somebody that might be favorable to capitalism, such as the Haitians and Papa Doc Duvalier. Now the chessboard has changed. Haiti doesn't really have the new global conflict is the war on terror. Haiti doesn't really have a dog in this fight. Haiti has nothing to do uh, with our new enemy, the global jihadists. They have nothing to do with Islam. They have nothing to do with our new enemy. They have no oil and no resources that we need. So we don't need to invest in them or help them. We consider them completely irrelevant. Communism and the Cuban regime that used to influence them or want to influence them is no longer strong enough to influence them. Fidel Castro has passed away. Um, uh, Miguel Diaz-Chanel is still in power, and the communists are still in power in Cuba. But due to the Soviet Union collapsing in 1991, their biggest ally is weak, so Cuba's poor in itself. Cuba can't afford to influence a lot of those bigger nations towards towards communism, like Grenada, Haiti, Angola, like they did previously, and even Mauritania previously. They can't afford to do that. They're much more isolated now, so they're not a threat. Communism in Asia still is a threat, as we can see with the TikTok ban in China. Lisa, but us and communism are kind of like in a détente thing, kind of like us and Russia were in the 70s, Lisa. So it's kind of it's. I told my mom earlier, it's a technological Cold War. It's not a real it's not a real military conflict unless they invade Taiwan. It was an ally. Lisa says these gangs took over really fast, though. There's no military over there. Lisa, the military is in the gangs. The military are members of the gang. Many military men are members of these gangs. These are not, see, in the United States, particularly in New York, I'll say New York. I won't say the whole United States, but particularly in New York, right, when it comes to gang culture, people think of it as something, oh, it's kiddie shit. You know what I mean? You're in it when you're 14, 15 years old. You know, you're running around B's and C's or whatever you're running around saying. And after that, you grow up out of that, you become a responsible adult, or you become a lifelong criminal that becomes deeply embedded into this shit. right? You don't enter into respectable society as a member of a gang. But in Central America and in South America and in the Caribbean, it's not like that. Gangs hold are composed of grown ass adult men that have grown up in it. Gangs that recruit young children to be part of these paramilitary organizations is totally different, Lisa. The amount of influence that they hold over the general society is different. A gang here is just, like I said, New York. I only mention my state, my city, because I know in California it's much more established. There is generations of gangsters, gangbangers, but even there, they're not allowed to influence the military. Now there are several military personnel here in the United States that are members of gangs, various gangs. You know what I mean? In Afghanistan and Iraq, they they discovered graffiti from the folks, graffiti people, graffiti, Lion King graffiti, blood graffiti, Stones, all every single gang, neo-Nazi gangs, Serenos, all kinds of every gang we have here in the United States. But still, they're low-level people. They're not strong enough to influence the greater society. They're not organized enough. These gangs can't even organize their own block, let alone how they're going to organize a government. But in Haiti, that's different. In Haiti and Central America, it's different. It, they hold a tremendous amount of influence over the society. And I don't know about G9. I think it's an indigenous Haitian gang. Not sure about its origins. But I know in Central America, and particularly in El Salvador, the gangs that are running this show there that the president was trying to put a stop to are gangs that actually originated here in the United States in the streets of Los Angeles. MS-13 originated in the United States in the 1980s. Like I said, during the Cold War, there was a faction in El Salvador that was communist and a faction that was capitalist, and the faction that was capitalists were forced out of the country, and we took them in as refugees. And when we took them in as refugees, we unleashed them in the streets of California that was already gang ridden by the Mexican mafia and by the Bloods and the Crips and a whole bunch of other gangs, like Mexican mafia affiliated, and Bloods and Crips, and they were teased, they were picked on for being El Salvadorian. So eventually, they formed their own gang that coalesced in the late '80s. And then those same kids got deported, and then those same kids brought that gang culture of MS-13, Mara Salvatrucha, to their home, back to their home country, and they joined the militaries that weren't really organized, and they eventually took over the government. And now they've brought their rivalries because you had MS-13 back here in the States used to beef with another group, another Sereno group on their streets, 18th Street. And the 18th Street also had members who were Salvadorian and they got deported, even though 18 is basically a Mexican gang. But they had Salvadorians that got deported, and they established their foothold in El Salvador. It's crazy, but I'm not sure about these Haitian gangs. Maybe these Haitian gangs do have some connections to certain U.S. based gangs. I don't know. I know there's a lot of Haitians in Flatbush, Haitian diaspora in Flatbush, and I know Crips, a Crip gang in New York has a connection to Flatbush. Pretty much runs that area of Brooklyn, so maybe they have some connection with them there. I don't know, but I know as far as West Indians and the Crips, the same thing happened in Belize. Belize didn't have really gangs, but Belizean Americans uh, immigrated. Belizean Americans immigrated to the Bronx, and a lot of them joined and took the gang, the Crip gang, back to Belize when they went back. You know, yeah. So yeah, Haiti is screwed. This is nothing new. I mean, this has been going on in a country like Italy for centuries. I mean, how do you think the Camoras, which is the criminal organizations in Naples, ran, or the mafia? Because when the police is too weak and too weak centralized government. See what we were talking about earlier, Lisa, when it came to Rome, that what eventually would have happened with Rome if not a strong military leader had taken over, like Caesar Augustus, Octavian, Caesar's nephew. If he had not taken over, a Rome would have fell into this, because this is what exactly what happened to Italy later on after the collapse of the Roman Empire, where these gangs took over, these Camoras and these secret societies. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're governmental, like more like a mafia. This happened in New York for years. You know, New York experienced. Believe it or not, New York experienced this in the 1800s. At least, if you go back and you look at the 2002 movie, Martin Scorsese movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Daniel Day Lewis, called The Gangs of New York, you can see that there are two gangs running the show. Two gangs that are influencing the New York political machine, which is called Tammany Hall, right? Uh, one are the nativists, who are Anglo-Saxon Protestant white people, and the other are the Dead Rabbits, the Irish, the Irish immigrants that are coming over um, after the potato famine in the 1840s, and they're basically running the government, and nobody has control. That won't happen here. I'll tell you why that won't happen here. Why that will never happen here? Because our gangs are minorities. Our gangs are Hispanic gangs like Sireños, Norteños, MS-13s, Latin Kings, etc. Or black gangs like Peace Stones, Vice Lords, GDs, Bloom Bloods, and Crips. And the white government here in the United States is not going to let minority gangs run the the government. That's never going to happen. There is a gang, or there is an organization, a fraternal organization that does run the government, and that there are high-ranking members of the government in it, and they use their political influence to effectively do these things. And that gang is the Ku Klux Klan. We all know about them. They are the oldest gang, if you will, in the United States, existing since the 1860s, founded in Biloxi, Mississippi, by Nathan Bedford Forrest. And they do have judges, cops. Now, the people won't starve, no. But the problem is what people are in favor. The people have to bend their will towards these gangs nowadays. You got to think. What if the people? Gangs are governed by emotions. You know this. You know what I mean? Even in a drug game, if a certain gang has a block, for example, for certain large criminal organizations, right? Let's say Latin Kings, they own a block. Those other drug dealers got to pay the taxes and pay the dues to that particular drug dealer. They get out of line. Doesn't matter if they're part of the Latin Kings too, or they're part of a different tribe or a different set, they'll be taken out. So you have to toe the line when it comes to these gangs. You don't have a say. It's not like constitutional government. It's not like a legal type of government where you can partition them. Or I can get a lawyer, right, and I could argue on my behalf with constitutional law. Such a thing doesn't exist. Like we said before in the other Caesar video, the breakdown of rule of law doesn't exist. When gangs are controlling things, when it happens in Africa a lot, where groups of warlords, especially Somalia, where groups of warlords are controlling things, or in the mountains in Pashtun in Afghanistan, groups of warlords are controlling things. Doesn't exist. I can't. I have to either go along with what they say, or I'll be taken out, me and my family. That's how the mafia was holding strangle in southern Italy for centuries, because the government was weak, the government was ineffective. Italy wasn't united until the 1840s. So these gangs ran the show. These Camorras, these mafias. Yeah, exactly. Lisa hit the nail uh, right on the head. They are Hamas with no coherent ideology. Hamas has a coherent ideology that's governed by religion, but they're like Hamas. Yeah, basically, they're thugs, and there are thugs in every society. There are thugs in every culture, and when thugs run shit, think of your school. Okay, have you ever gone to a bad school? I went to a good school, so there was no gangs, thugs, or anything like this running the show. My shit was like 90210 with uh, people in wheelchairs, disabilities and shit. So my shit was different. But in a regular school where there is crime ridden, a particular gang, whatever that gang may be, controls that area, right? A blood school, a crip school, or whatever. Everyone has to pay homage, in a sense, act like they respect, walk on eggshells to please said gang member, right? And people, women, they want to be involved in relationships with that gang member, the high ranking gang members. The men want to, the younger kids want to strive to be like the leader, the OG of that gang. They run their show, and you have to pay respect to them. You have to pay tribute to them. So imagine that on a micro level in a country. You have people living in constant fear. And every gang has rivals. And then you have constant civil war, like with Hamas. What did Hamas do in 2006 when they seized power? That's a perfect example what Lisa's talking about. When Hamas seized power in 2006 from Fatah, which is their political rivals in the Palestinian Authority, they threw them out the window. They didn't say get out of the country. They didn't exile them. They threw them out the window. They literally picked them up and threw them out the window and killed them. Not nice guys. Now, I think in the United States, people like Trump's people, they would love to do that. They would love to be a gang too, the MAGA gang, and seize power just like that. And have Trump as the boss directing traffic and telling people, throw this guy out the window, kill this guy. Oh, I don't like this guy, kill him. And everybody has to wear the colors. Everybody has to wear the hat, the MAGA hat, and pledge allegiance and act like they're down with Trump. Gangs are just bullies in a collective. Now, people say, well, and they come out of economic desperation. They come out of being bullied themselves. Most gangs have origin stories that they were bullied, they were marginalized, and that's why they came about. Like Hamas has that origin story. Even the KKK has a sympathetic origin story that's completely bullshit, founded in the myth of the lost cause that When the Yankees came in after the end of the Civil War, Southerners were deprived of their rights, and Southerners were pushed aside in political appointees for black people and Northerners, carpetbaggers coming in, and Southerners felt disgruntled, and Southerners felt like they had the foot on their neck, so they had to take action in their own hands and form this vigilante group. Right? Every gang has that. Hamas, of course, has that vis-a-vis the Israeli occupation. Other gangs have that, like the origin story said, La Nuestra Familia, the Norteños, where they were oppressed in prison and taken advantage of in prison by the Mexican mafia, and that's why they had to rebel. Right? So every gang basically has that. Every gang, every organization basically has that. We were taken advantage of. We were exploited by a colonial government, by another group, another gang, and we had to fight back. We had no other choice. But interestingly enough, when they get power, they begin to do the exact same thing as they complained that the other group was doing. you know, when they get power, they begin to exact the same sort of oppression that they complained the other group was doing. Perfect example: New York. The origins of New York gangs. We talked about a lot on this channel. It was floating with tons and tons of gangs in the 1970s. The Bronx was loaded with gang members, and there was the whole Avenue Treaty in 1971. Basically, every gang came together, and they formed a mega gang called the Universal Zulu Nation, and that was basically the end of gangbanging in New York until 1986, where Latino inmates were complaining that they were being pushed aside, they were being oppressed, so they felt like they had to form a gang to protect themselves. And that's exactly what happened. But then they went on to oppress other gangs, other groups of people, which led to the formation of the New York City Bloods in 1993. Lisa says, why did the prime minister leave Haiti? Well, why did he leave Haiti? Well, Lisa, he's scared. He has no power. He's a puppet. Why did Hamid Karzai leave Afghanistan after the takeover in 2021? He's scared. Here's somebody who was put into power by the United States. He was put into power by the West. He's a puppet. He has no power compared to these gangs. They'll kill him right away. He's an ally of the United States because where did he go? Puerto Rico, which is a territory of the United States. Whenever these puppet regime guys whenever these puppet regime guys go to a country, they'll go to a country that's safe. You know what I mean? The Shah of Iran, exiled out of Iran in 1979, after the Islamists took power. Where does he go? Panama, which at that time was still controlled. The Panama Canal was still controlled by the United States. So obviously, he was an American puppet. And this is more dangerous than your average gang because they have military training. It's kind of like the cartels in Mexico. A lot of the cartel members in Mexico, whether it's the Sinaloa cartel, whether it's the the Jalisco cartel, the next generation Jalisco, uh, whatever it is, a lot of these cartels in Mexico have military support. It's totally different than what we see here in the States. And just like we saw in the Bob Marley movie, Lise, politics in this part of the world is not as civil as politics in the United States, or politics in the United States was basically very civil. Here in these places, in these parts of the world, they take politics into their own hands, you know, and gangs and factions oftentimes influence it to a dangerous degree. Here, it doesn't happen that way because we're not at that level yet, but we will be. Look, before 2021, January 6th, 2021, we never had a coup in our country. We had several elections go by smoothly. Might be. This is, are we seeing the end of Haiti? Might be. Hopefully, it's not. Hopefully, the United States will have some sense to step in, help. You know what I mean? But the United States doesn't. This is what pisses me off about the United States. We hear so much about the how beneficent the United States is to um, countries like Israel, or countries like the Ukraine that are suffering, or countries like Taiwan that are suffering under the boot of oppressive neighbors, be it Hamas, be it China, be it Russia. But what about Haiti? They don't want to do anything about Haiti because Haiti has no enemy. Haiti has no, there's no Hamas, there's no Russia, there's no, well, I should say, not even Hamas. There's no Iran, there's no Russia, and there's no China. So, in the United States' mind, Haiti doesn't matter as much as Taiwan and Ukraine and Israel. Taiwan, Ukraine, and Israel, those are the ones we have to protect from the big bad Russia, China, and Iran. Haiti, its neighbors are just as poor as it. And Cuba used to be a big enemy geopolitically with us, a big rival geopolitically with us, a regional rival geopolitically, but we had to protect uh, the other Caribbean nations, like the invasion in 1982 of Grenada. We had to protect uh, other Caribbean nations from it. But Cuba is no more. Cuba doesn't have that power. Cuba doesn't have that influence. So who's there to bother us? We only care if there's an enemy at the doorstep. We only care if there's a China at the doorstep, or Russia at the doorstep, or an Iran at the doorstep. Otherwise, why do we care? It's like Africa. Terrorist groups like Boko Haram in Nigeria or Al Shabaab in Kenya could do anything in Africa because, I mean, you have the double whammy of one, they're black nations, so the United States is a white nation and a white supremacist nation at that, with a white supremacist ideology, despite having a black president for 8 years, is going to think I don't really care about these black nations anyway. Number two, they have no resources that we really need. Number three, they're not surrounded by an enemy that will influence us. Okay, so they let Boko Haram do what they want in Nigeria. They let the government of Nigeria with the SARS oppress the people for dressing a certain way, dressing hip hop, right? They let Al Shabaab do whatever they want in Kenya, and the Somali immigrants come down and influence and terrorize Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania all they wanted. And the United States did nothing about it. But as soon as ISIS started doing stuff in Europe, as soon as ISIS started doing stuff in France, in Munich, in Cologne, in Germany, and other parts of mainland Europe, then we had to act. Then we had to destroy ISIS at its core in Syria because they're attacking European nations. They're attacking allies. But what kind of danger did Al Shabaab and Boko Haram posed. The same they had the same kind of ideological strain as ISIS, right, and Al Qaeda before them, but they didn't pose a threat to any of our allies. Nigeria and Kenya, they mean nothing to us. Haiti means nothing to us in the grand scheme of things. So in that sense, we will turn a blind eye to it. Look, in the '90s, we sat there, Lisa, and we said the phrase after the Holocaust, "Never again," right? We said never again would we allow a a government to impose genocide on its people. Meanwhile, in 1994, as Congress was threatening to shut down and Newt Gingrich and the House of Representatives were proposing a new contract for America, trying to get Bill Clinton on sexual allegations. During that time, Rwandans in East Africa were being murdered in the same brutal way that the Jews were gas chambered during the 1930s, and the world did nothing. The world sat idly by while that happened. Likewise, 10 years later, in Sudan, the Janjaweed, which translates in Arabic to devils on horseback, went around chopping off heads and mutilating vaginas of black Sudanese in the Darfur region in a campaign of ethnic cleansing by the North. And the United States turned a blind eye to it. No economic interest. Yet in 1999, when Clinton was trying, 1998, 1999, when Clinton was trying to divert attention from his political affairs, he then bombed Sudan. But why did he bomb Sudan then? Who was there? Osama bin Laden. So unless it's in our vested interest to attack a nation or to protect a nation, we turn a blind eye to that nation, especially if that nation's citizens are black people. Because in the end of the day, the reason why organizations like Black Lives Matter, as corrupt as they may be, as as financially irresponsible as they may be, the reason why we have to keep reiterating Black Lives Matter is because on a global level as well as a local level, the American government doesn't think they do. Peace. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see my next video is coming out. Love you guys. And don't forget another thing. This is the same U.S. government who during the 1980s collaborated with the apartheid government of South Africa and classified Nelson Mandela a terrorist up until like 2014. And you think they care about a black nation that means so much to black history, global black history as Haiti? Peace. Pray for the people of Haiti. Pray for democracy in Haiti. Pray for freedom in Haiti. Freedom from the tyranny of these vicious gangs. And you have only the imperialistic nations of the West, like France and the United States, to thank for their downfall. Peace. And like I said, Lisa, when the rule of law fails and charismatic leaders die, that's the end of the world as we know it, as REM would say. Peace.